We just got back from the premiere of The Batman.
I was quite amazed, honestly.
Yeah, the first thing you said when we finished, you were like, I was impressed.
Yeah.
And
I was very impressed. They did a good job. DC's kind of gotten a bad reputation the last few years in their live-action movies, and this definitely breaks that mold.
For sure. With this film, hopefully with others, I mean, the Joker probably started it, but they're doing what's called Black Label DC, and in the comics it's also known as like Elseworlds, but they're stories that don't necessarily follow the mainstream of what most people recognize, and you know, they kind of go off the beaten path in a way. And this movie felt very much like a Batman movie, felt very much like it was a comic book movie, but at the same time, the whole universe that it was set in was extremely, just raw, like, just, and new as well, like, not like anything that I've ever seen.
Yeah, it didn't feel like any other Batman movie I've ever seen, which at first kind of threw me off, but as I, kept watching the movie and I kind of got accustomed to it, I actually started to really enjoy it.
We're still in the spoiler-free segment, so, at some point during the video, we're gonna cut it and say, alright, this point onward, we're gonna talk spoilers. But right now, you're safe if you haven't seen the movie yet. Comparing it to some of the bigger Batman films that people might have seen in the past, like The Dark Knight or Batman Begins, or even some of the original ones, what do you think about this movie that, like, some of the different kind of elements that it brought?
The thing I noticed first is how much darker the movie was, which is kind of weird to say for a Batman movie. Like, he's the Dark Knight. But honestly, just the lighting in it was a lot darker. Most of the movie takes place at night, which just kind of the way they do it gives him an even darker feel. It's also a young Batman that's still like figuring out exactly who he's trying to be. He's not quite as impressive as like the Dark Knight Batman that you may be used to. By the end of the movie, you're like, oh, yeah, but he's getting there.
Yeah, they make it a point to show how he's like still vulnerable in a way. He definitely is set up as like the one that everybody's afraid of and the one that turns all the criminals on their tail. But at the same time, you see this like human side of him when he's like in action in the streets, and he still gets beat up. He still gets knocked out a couple times. Like, he's not completely decked out in plot armor,
Yeah.
Which is a good way of putting it. They didn't really try to go heavy with superhero themes. They're not going to try to include other superheroes or anything. I think that it would be a good idea if they kept it central to like the Gotham city, but it could definitely be opened up for a sequel, and I think a sequel is actually in development, or it was at least greenlit, so
yeah,
that gives me high hopes because I think it was such a successful film. As far as personal enjoyment, acting, people probably had their doubts about Robert Pattinson, seeing as how the only thing you hear is like, oh, he's the guy from Twilight, but he was a really great actor. Like, the voice that he had for Batman, and he wasn't even trying too hard either. You would go into that movie and it seemed like you'd expect an actor like him to like try hard to be Batman, but he did it with ease. He just fit that role perfectly, of the edgy, still trying to figure himself out and figure out his city, like that kind of Batman. And towards the end, you definitely saw like a huge transformation.
Probably like the one weak spot maybe in the movie, which again kind of comes into the whole fact that he's a growing Batman, is the Bruce Wayne was kind of edgy for me. Just kind of the Bruce Wayne I'm used to is normally, he's the mask of, he's the true mask, and he's pretending at least to be this like kind of happy-go-lucky, maybe not happy-go-lucky, but like kind of upbeat billionaire playboy, and you didn't really get that in this film. But again, it kind of goes back to the character development, and I guess I'm interested to see what they do in the sequel, if they do, and kind of who they'll have Bruce Wayne grow into.
The villains were an interesting choice because, like, they're villains that you see classically working together or being associated together, but the take on these villains in particular was like a little bit more realistic and not as like comic booky, you know?
Yeah. The Penguin was just... Penguin's kind of had several incarnations throughout comic books. This was kind of more of his gangster... Or, more of his entrepreneur side. Where he's running the Iceberg Lounge, and he's a gangster, but it's kind of like under the radar. He's at least pretending to be like this upright businessman when he's really like the right hand of this huge crime organization.
Riddler, they went full serial killer mode with the iteration of Riddler, which I thought was awesome.
It was a very different Riddler, but it worked for this movie, and it was probably the best way you could do a realistic Riddler. He didn't have like the funky costume, so if they could figure out a way to like tease that at some point, I would personally love it. But like the way they did it is she's like actually kind of scary, which is not a word you associate with the Riddler.
Not at all. And he makes a friend at the end of the film. But, maybe we'll talk about that in the spoilers segment. If you haven't seen the movie yet and you still want to see the movie, we're going to give you guys 10 seconds to click out of the video. Starting now.
How was your day then?
My day's been good.
That's good.
I worked and then I went and I saw Batman.
Dude, that was my day. Like, exact.
Dang. First thing I want to say about the Riddler, too, at the end when I felt like when they tried to make the whole army of Riddlers, like, it wasn't really an army, it was kind of like a ragtag group at the end. Like, probably a dozen people dressed in the exact same outfit as the Riddler, basically. I'm not sure what they were trying to go for, because Batman beats up one of them and asks him, like, who are you? And he says, I am vengeance, which is Batman's line. So I think they are Riddler's, like, supporters, because you see on his social media he's got like an Instagram live type setup, and he's got these followers that are commenting on his stuff, and but that's really it. Like, you just see the one thread of comments on his live videos, and then cut to like the 12 people dressed up in Riddler outfits with rifles at the Gotham Square Garden trying to shoot the lady who's running for mayor, and it just seemed like a very like quick way to kind of shoehorn that in. That seemed a lot like what they were trying to do in Joker, making like that mob mentality of like, oh, we are pissed off about this thing too, and this person is speaking for us type of deal. Joker did that a whole lot better, I think.
Well, I kind of saw it, and I was thinking this is supposed to be like the beginning of the Riddler game. Do you know how like each of the Batman villains kind of has their own gang? Angle gang, Two-Face gang, the Riddler gang. Are these supposed to be like Riddler's henchmen? And this is kind of like the backstory of how he gets them.
Could be.
With the whole like I am vengeance line, I mean that was just important because like the idea, and it's honestly like kind of an interesting life lesson too, is like what kind of impact Batman's been having, like what kind of legacy he's been building, and like at this point he realizes, oh, I've been kind of teaching the wrong lesson. I've been teaching people to kind of to like get revenge and to like focus on taking out the bad guy. And if I've been doing that too much, I need to actually like, not just take out the bad guy, but actually like care about building the city up and like, you know, making sure this place is actually safe for, you know, people living, for you, your family, your friends, the whole city. You kind of see that change in Batman at the end, which I think, like, classically in the comics normally takes longer, but it's definitely something you see. Normally, it's like by the time Batman's working with the Justice League, that's normally kind of when that change happens, where he starts becoming a bit lighter.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've read a handful of Batman comic books. I've collected a lot of comics over the years, and I can't even, you know, some big picture stories are some of my favorites, but like, it doesn't seem like you see him humanistically saving a whole bunch of people all at once, like he did in this film.
Yeah.
You see him going into the rubble and reaching for people and helping them out one by one and like leading them to safety. And that seems like that part doesn't necessarily happen too often. I think in the comics, he more like saves one person, or like it's the person that he saves is more impactful, more meaningful to that story. Like Jim Gordon's kid and Jim Gordon's wife in like The Dark Knight Rises, for example, or The Dark Knight.
It kind of makes sense, honestly. Like, if superheroes did exist, like, I don't know, like how much of their time would be like search and rescue versus just like fighting. Like, even if you think of EMS, like, I mean, it probably depends where you live, but a lot of the EMS's job is search and rescue.
I didn't see any EMS, no firemen in that movie, and the entire city was being flooded.
There were some medics at the end.
I didn't see him.
Like helping the mayor who got shot in the thigh. Like the side.
And the National Guard at least came too.
Yeah.
They were flying someone off in a stretcher.
Yeah, no, not a lot of EMS, just police officers. It felt to me like, you know, in The Dark Knight, how they have like probably like the hour-long bit where Batman and Jim Gordon are trying to like solve the Joker's like killing mystery and like figure out who he's gonna hit next and try and stop him. That felt like the majority of this movie to me.
It was just expanded upon, like expanding on that.
Like they took that kind of bit and they ran with it, made it their own, and like the whole movie is just like this huge long detective story.
Yeah.
Until like the very end.
Like a crime thriller.
Yeah. We're just trying to figure out what's the Riddler's up to. It's the one point that's kind of disappointing, which again makes sense that since he's a young Batman, is that he's always kind of like one step behind the Riddler, and he can't ever like get ahead of him until like the very end. He's able to catch up.
Yeah.
But it does seem like he's kind of playing the Riddler's game a bit.
We talked about this too when we were watching it, is the fact that Batman had this squirrel suit kind of gliding system when he jumped off of a building, and you know, Josh noted that was a lot more realistic than him gliding with his cape throughout the city. So I appreciated that.
I wonder though if that's supposed to be like kind of like the forerunner of the whole cape gliding system. Like if he's going to get that in the next movie.
Yeah, maybe.
I think we should talk about Catwoman. She was a big part in that movie, and we have not talked much about her.
No. Yeah, Catwoman was also portrayed a little bit differently. In all of the comics and stuff, she's like, you know, wicked, kind of no-nonsense, very confident, very badass character. And this character was too, but kind of like only when she had her mask on, and she also seemed a little bit like impulsive and brash in a way, because her motivation was to get revenge basically for her friend who was killed in the beginning. which I guess, she was maybe getting that idea from Batman.
Well, even before, like, her friend gets killed, like, the whole point she's there, she's trying to get revenge on Falcone. Falcone, in this rendition, is her father, who kind of abandoned her as a girl. And so she's trying to get revenge on him for that and kind of, steal his money, his drug money. Like, it was a good background for Catwoman, kind of like a good reason for her to get into the whole cat burglary thing and not... Well, I don't know, it makes her seem a little better, like, morally speaking.
Yeah.
More misguided than just a straight-up crook.
Yeah, it was very easy for her and Batman to team up. Usually it takes
him running across the city chasing after her and like them fighting more, and they fought a little bit, but then all of a sudden they were like in the same scene they were fighting, they were teaming up. So
yeah, there was not much conflict between the two of them.
No. That's not what the movie was going for. The movie was going for more of like, your enemy is my enemy, so we're friends.
Yeah. Yeah, it was very much the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Like, between Batman and Catwoman. I also really, really liked the way they did Penguin.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't anything special. He was just like this grimy midget gangster. And the...
Little person.
I'm just kidding.
Who was the actor who played him? He did a phenomenal job.
Colin Farrell.
I don't know if he was wearing a fat suit or if he like gained weight for the role, but Colin Farrell is a generally like normal sized dude. And Penguin was like pretty thick.
He looked like the Penguin.
Yeah, he did. He looked straight up like from the Batman video games.
Yeah.
Arkham games. Which is cool because the Iceberg Lounge I think is something that's from the video games as well.
Yeah, and the video games is a bit more ritzy. This was kind of more of like a...
Nightclub.
Nightclub, strip club. They had like the ritzy area inside.
Yeah. The fight scene in the nightclub was pretty cool.
Oh, yeah.
Another different thing from Batman live action movies. I don't really think there's like nightclub fights that you see.
No, there's not really much fighting, like I feel like there's not much fighting in like confined crowded spaces like that.
Yeah. And the Joker.
Oh yeah, the Joker's teasing it.
I didn't know they were gonna bring the Joker in.
I thought that it would be like a cop out in a way, because there's already like so many versions of the Joker and they keep coming out with new ones. But like, I don't know. When he was talking and then he said the line about the clown, and I was like, oh, that's Joker. And then I saw his face and it almost looked like scarred, like Two-Face. But I think they were intentionally trying to hide it. Like, because you could see his face and you could see him smile and stuff. But it really didn't completely seem like the Joker. Like, you saw, like, his nose in the beginning, like the shadow of his nose, and it was pretty, like, shapely. Kind of like yours.
Thank you,
on
Greg.
the side. And then, yeah, he had a little Joker laugh in there, which was cool.
Yeah, I feel like we just didn't get a lot of him. Like, it's kind of hard to tell at this point. Like, yeah, like Greg was saying, like, you don't really get a clear look at him. So I'm really interested to see what they do with him in future movies. If they put him in the next one, or maybe save him for, like, the third.
Yeah.
If they make this into a trilogy. I don't know what they're planning.
It's supposed to be a trilogy, which is exciting.
I definitely would be down to see this turn into a trilogy.
Yeah, for sure.
Also, Andy Serkis playing Alfred, the butler.
So good.
So good. Michael Caine always will have a special place in my heart, but Andy Serkis comes real close. Not gonna lie.
Yeah.
I honestly, my only complaint is that I wish we'd seen more of him.
Yeah, that's true. If you saw the Gotham TV show, like this movie seemed like it could be like that Gotham TV show, but like taking place in the future. Except for the fact that Gordon and Gotham TV show was white, but there's no problem with that because the actor that played Gordon in this, I forget his name. He's one of my favorites. He's really dope. And what was I gonna say? Oh, yeah. It's only like year 2 of everything, so
Yeah. So much room to grow.
so much fun.
So much room. If they decide to bring in like other characters from the Bat family, you know, like they
Yeah, they could.
I mean, I think they got a good thing going, and they got to be careful not to ruin it. But like, they got some real potential. It was a good movie.
Go see it.
You won't regret it.
There's no.